All right. Well, good morning. Uh, Welcome to Ascended World. This is Angela Coulter
There's Sieg Avignone in
and
the sunshine.
in the sunshine. I can barely see your face. You
I
see
know.
your eyes.
Yeah,
But anyone who's listening doesn't matter because you're just listening. So
that's
it
right.
is what it is. So what we're talking about is, so we had an energy share on Friday night at my house, and it's like the end of the year one. We always do this at the end of November because we don't do one in December because of the holidays and everybody's just all busy and stuff. So, and we do a potluck, and a lot more people tend to come than typical because we do it every month. And it was funny because it was huge and intense, and we'll talk about what that was all about in a minute. But there was somebody who I adore, who she can't, and she comes and she tends to come about once or twice a year to the share, and in the middle of this huge, collective. So what we do are these vortexes of collective intention, and they're just really incredibly powerful for everyone. It's like a big jolt of opening and shifting and everything else. So in the middle of that, and I can feel the energy like lifting up because we're lifting some really deep gunk up and out. And she literally just got up and ran to the bathroom. And I'm thinking, oh my God, she's going to throw up. That was
Puke it up. Puke
and
it out.
and I'm like saying to her, okay, well, like out there, you're still connected, but do what you need to do. And it was like, so anyway, we had a huge, it was a huge shift. It was great and powerful. And I apparently was recuperating from that all weekend because I had a bunch of stuff come up for me. And then it was like really luggy and icky on Saturday. And then it was really nice yesterday. So well, Saturday morning, and then we got better Saturday afternoon. That was into Sunday. But the point that this is all about is, I was joking and sort of joking around, and I was like, well, maybe you should come to share more. Once or twice a year, and she's somebody I know well, and I'll see her on a regular basis for a while, and we'll go out to dinner, we'll hang out, and then I won't see her for 6 months or a year, and then all of a sudden she'll just show up again, and that's all fine. But usually it's because what happens is she does all this self-work and she's focused, in the higher consciousness and the bigger picture. And then because there's something that's wrong, quote unquote, or, unaligned in her life. And then so she will do the self-work, and then all of a sudden what happens is it shifts, and she's like, oh, yay, it shifts. And instead of that motivating her to do it more, then she just sort of drops it and then goes and runs with what shifted and forgets that, doing that self work and meaning self meditation and self sessions and energy healing and doing consciousness work and observance work and all that kind of stuff. It's almost like she just puts it all aside and then runs with it. And this is just her pattern, which is fine. But we started talking about that because it's sort of like, what did you say it was like?
Oh, it's like you only come when it's like medicine. You take it till you feel good. Well, the medicine's what's making you feel good.
Right. Although it's not medicine. It's just.
Well, it's self-care.
Right.
Yeah, it's like you take care of yourself until you get to a place where you feel good, and rather than continuing or increasing the self-care, it's like, okay, now I don't need that.
Right, because you can feel even better.
Right.
And it's like, but what we have this tendency to do is, oh, I'm good enough right now.
Right. And that's what's hitting me. And as we're talking about this, is we seem to, and I'm speaking for myself, get to a place of good enough, even financially.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's almost like if you come from that place of desperation, it's like, they talk about the people who go to church and say, oh God, if you'll just make me feel better.
Right.
Well, it's like, you're so low that it's like, I'll take just this tiny little morsel and I'll be happy. And it's like, we seem to be just stuck there. It's like accepting that as and I'm speaking about myself, is that, you know, I just need the angst and the anxiety and fear to go away, just so I can maintain that I can't look beyond that right now.
Right. Right. And crap, I just lost what I was going to say. That's a really good point too.
Well, it's like settling.
Yeah. Well, and we think, oh wow, oh yeah, because if this is good enough, I mean, there's this like, well, then there's this underlying thing, and I talk to people about it, and then they sort of like get this glazed look about them, like, yeah, or they yes me to death, like, oh yeah, I understand.
Well, I've already done that.
Which is, well, but you can keep on going, because it doesn't have to just be good enough. You know, you deserve as a divine to be freaking awesome and blissful all the time, and hugely abundant and prosperous and healthy and vibrant and all that kind of stuff. Not just, oh, I don't have crippling pain today. I mean, that's like,
exactly.
And so like last week on my podcast, on the Living the Shift podcast, and I was talking about darkness and stuff, but part of that has to do with this whole existence in this embodiment has been based in lack and lack,
right,
and propulsion from lack. Right. And this is perfectly the same thing of, you know, oh, I feel shitty, so I want to do something to make myself feel better, instead of how about I do something so that I'm good all the time, feel great all the time, right? Or, no, this is good enough. I'm just happy to not have my migraine. I'm just happy to not have, you know, the allergy or whatever, you know, and that's a step in the direction, but then it's like, but then you can do even more.
Well, it's almost the difference between making a change to feel better versus a habitual lifestyle.
Yes. And
I think judgment's wrapped up in there too, because, you know, you shift your judgment from, you know, oh, I'm such a loser, I'm such, you know, to where you feel better, and it's like, okay, I'm worthy to feel this level of health, but no more.
Right. Well, or that was just like, or the ego, you know, and there's these little tweaky things, right? Or these little things that the ego tells us. We tell ourselves via the ego, which is, oh, I don't have to work for that. Like, and then there's this perception of work, but not that we have to have work being hard, but it's a habit of doing, of being in a certain place, right?
And allowing, and I think that's something else. It's like, if you get to a place of remembering and just allowing, it's actually easier than not allowing.
Right.
It's like turning around instead of, you know, swimming against the current, turning around and just going with the current.
Right. And this is the holistic, holographic, multiversal way of existing, is constant consciousness, constant incorporation. And yes, it is a bit of an effort in the beginning when we start digging ourselves out of that deep hole of separation and victimhood, you know, that we've gotten into the habit of living and lack, you know, that we've gotten into this deeply embedded habit of when we're incarnate here, especially. And that we're like, oh, it's like digging a hole, like, oh my God, I'm out of breath. And it's like, okay, so say you had to dig a hole and you're getting to some treasure, right? To some golden treasure or whatever. Well, okay, so you're digging down and you're motivated to dig down because you know that the treasure's under there, right? The reward is there, right? So then you get to the treasure and you're like, oh, this is awesome. You get excited. This is amazing, blah, blah, blah. And you tout the, you know, the rewards of the efforts and all that kind of stuff. Well, then you leave the hole just sitting there open and gaping.
Right. Well, or you get to the reward and it's like, okay, yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
But it's not.
And there might be more treasure underneath, but you're just like, no, that's good. That set me up.
Right. satisfied for the moment.
Right. Right. Until you have like another issue or lack or some propulsion that comes up, right? Of lack, propulsion of lack. That's really what we are based on. Like, why do we do something? Like, why do people start working out? Because they want to lose weight. Why do people start, meditating? Because they're having massive issues and nothing else is working. Why do they?
And it's like their motivator is to relieve the symptoms, not to just get to a better place, because
Right.
that's not the way our lifestyle and our society teaches.
And like, what if, that whatever you're digging, the treasure, right, is actually just this little piece of culmination that has all of these layers underneath it that could provide like this entire planet of treasure without any effort if we just allowed ourselves to get down there, right? And that's sort of what we're doing with this kind of work. It's like with this kind of, when we do this self-observance and we do continuous self-observance and energy sessions and meditation and all that kind of stuff, part of it is to get down into like the key things so that like I'm not get down into, but actually just be able to get past, be able to recognize and get past and recognize that we have things that are holding us back, right? The boulders in the river or whatever, right? And to acknowledge that we don't need to hold them to be an identity, to be like
Right.
This is who I am because of this, and this is how I have to do things. And there's so many different layers of that if we're the thing is, when I started consciously doing this 9 years ago now, it was a big chunk of stuff for a good period of time. Like, and every time I felt like I took down this tower, of whatever, there was another one that was even bigger right behind it. And it was a little breathless for a while. And it was sometimes a little like frustrating, right? But at some point I recognized, like I joke all the time, right? Anybody I talk to, when they say, oh, well, I have this or this issue. And I'm like, well, you can change that. Or I have to do this, or I have to eat this, or I have to eat this way. I'm like, well, you can change that. We can easily change anything when we're in a clear enough space, right? Of claiming our divine self, claiming our divine right, our divine consciousness, right? But many like will get like this, like 20 feet in and be like, oh, I got this little reward. Okay, so that's enough.
Good enough. Yeah.
Until, guess what? The next time I'm in lack, so it propels me to something to do it again, right?
Right.
And then that'll be enough when I get to that.
Right.
So the key for all of this that many, misinterpret is, and this is the challenge. And this is something, actually, this is so funny because these are some of the epiphanies that came to me yesterday about, but the challenge is we are still unpracticed and not in this habit of connecting all the dots, right? We still put things in boxes.
Right.
Oh, I'm feeling great. My meditations is feeling great, blah, blah, blah. Doing this and this and this. And, I still have this issue, whatever that is, right? That won't go away. But I'm not going to look at that. That's just there. I can't do anything about it, but I can feel better over here. And it's like, well, but do you realize that feeling good over here can help this if you focus on,
right,
getting through it, without it being a block in your way.
Yeah, it's almost like you've come to a place of acceptance of the blockage and are attempting to own it, make it part of you, and then just go from there.
Right.
Rather than allowing that to clear away too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's, it's like someone I know who, as long as I can remember, has had issues in their sacral area, right? Their sacral chakra.
Right.
So they had female issues, right? An early, tumor on an ovary, had to get taken out. Had think endometriosis and something else, and then ended up having to get the uterus taken out like at a pretty early age, and had one ovary left, and then ended up having to get the ovary taken out like about the age of 50. So that then they, you know, fully into menopause, and then, you know, a couple years, maybe a year or two later, you know, they complained to me that, well, you know, I got all this stuff taken out, and now I have now I just went for like a, you know, a preventive, you know, MRI or whatever, and there's some growths that are, you know, like showing up in that area. And I said to them, so at some point, if it keeps on coming back, since you have this thing that keeps on manifesting in different ways in the same area, you might want to just look at why it is. There's obviously something you're still holding on to that's represented by that part of your body.
Right. There's a way you're still defining yourself that doesn't serve you.
Yes. And so, you know, fast forward several years later, and the person just, you know, like, it's just all these different, like, you know, they have now their back issues in the same area. You know, it's like, and so, and it's a great, and there's no judgment about it. The thing is, how many messages do we have to give ourselves? And I laugh because there are some times where I smack myself in the head and I'm like, how did I just not see that? Right. But,
well, and it's very valuable to be able to come to a place of looking at it from the higher perspective, because then you're able to be more objective about yourself.
Yes.
To look at it from that higher perspective, so you can see it from a bigger picture rather than being just in the pain or in the suffering or in the boulder.
Yeah. Yeah. Or, you know, at some level, right, the ego says, I would rather manifest this as something physical that I can put all my attention and energy to than actually just look at this and shift it so that it doesn't cause me to have to do that anymore.
Right. Yeah. What I've told a client once, that you have to get to a place where the pain of staying the same is greater than the fear of changing.
Right. But, and look at that. Look at both those words. So they're both still propulsion words, right? Pain and fear.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And it's like, how about we simply shift ourselves to commit to, because, oh, the point I was saying about like all the big things that I had to deal with, I had to deal with some major stuff that came up when I was first consciously recognizing how to do all this. And it was constant, and it was frustrating at times and tiring, and then at one point things started to even out. And then things would come up, but they would be a lot smaller, you know? And that's what I call like that when we get to the crumbs, right? Because the crumbs are a lot smaller, but then they're a lot louder because you don't have all of this other stuff yelling all around them, you know? And that's the thing, is if we are constant and consistent in self, you know, observance and self sessions, and like, and shifting ourselves beyond the stuff that we're holding on to and recreating over and over again in different messages.
Right.
If we instead put our energy to allow, you know, to committing ourselves to change, that's what it is. It's committing ourselves to change.
Or committing ourselves to live from a different place.
Yeah. Because, and from a place of that blissful well-being is the baseline, right?
Right.
And it's maintenance, not striving to do something different, right?
Right. Right. Yeah, it's that commitment from living from a different place that I think that, you know, if you can even acknowledge that that's what it is, it shifts the perspective on what you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. It becomes, you know, unacceptable to settle for anything but that bliss.
Yeah. Yep.
That feels really good.
It really does, because it shifts. Yeah, because then it's because if you start thinking about, oh, well, I've got to clear this, because here's the thing, you know, too, when we do look at it from a bigger picture, it is like one big interconnected knot of stuff, right? Because there's so many layers of it.
Right.
And we've created so many lessons out of different propulsions and separations and all that kind of stuff. So it's like pulling a needle out of a haystack to say, okay, this one thing will change all of it. But if you're consistent on, okay, well, let's just look at the stuff that, first of all, is blocking right now, right? And then after that's passed, now let me commit myself to looking at the bigger stuff that's sort of fallen by the wayside, but is still there, right? And then eventually get to the point of, it's just, yeah, being in this place of, nope, I feel really good, right? I feel awesome 99% of the time. And if in that 1% that I'm not, something, you know, like, and I'm continuing to do this place of, you know, like consciousness and meditation and self-observance and create and conscious creation, then I become, you know, then you get clear enough to start doing conscious creation. And as you do the conscious creation, then it's not done by propulsion. You're doing it from that place, this other place, right?
Right.
You're doing
well, it's proactive versus reactive.
Yes. And then if you see any little blip, it's only a little blip and it's really easy to deal with.
It's not as screaming loud.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a blip versus, you know, versus a hurricane or a tsunami, you know?
Tornado.
It's a little breeze versus a tornado.
or, you know, you can pay attention to the little rumbling earthquake, or you can just wait for the tsunami at the beach.
Exactly. Right. And it's funny because when I teach people and doing Trinity and all that kind of stuff, when I teach people to do that, and like in class, inevitably they start working with other people, like, because initially people come in a lot and this happens all the time. Even people who've been doing it for a long time, they're like, oh, I don't see anything. I don't get messages. But when I actually sit with them or spend any time with them and we talk out stuff, and I'm like, do you realize that's a message? Do you realize it's a message? Do you realize that's a message too? Or they'll be talking like, oh, well, I understood this and this and this, but then their ego's like, oh, but I'm just making that up, right? And then I'm like, no, well, that's your message that you keep on saying you're not getting.
Right.
And the message is from when we allow ourselves to say, okay, I have all the answers, instead of I have to seek them, right, from somebody else, from someplace else. It's that allowance, right? It's allowing it to come through. And then when the answer comes of like, okay, this is here for this, like, because then you say, well, why is this here? If I create my reality and I do, why is this here?
Right.
Then it's like, well, how does it shift? How do I, all right, well, what is it here for? To show me that, you know, this is not aligned with this. Okay, well, let me just shift that. And it's a tweak, and it makes things so much easier.
Right.
So it's funny when people say to me, well, oh yeah, it's easy for you to say that you can change that. And I'm like, it is easy for me to say. You know why? Because I constantly do the self stuff, the self-observance, the self-sessions, the self-work, the meditation, the consciousness habits, you know, like having that incorporated into everything, instead of just when I'm sitting down to meditate or going to a meetup or, you know, having a share. It's all the time to say, why is this here? You know, and then that's the incorporation. And when we get to that place, it is just a habit, because I'll tell you what, it is a habit now for me when something just comes up that feels like even a little twinge of icky, right? To be able to observe it and say, so what's that there for?
Right.
Even judgment in my head of other people or anything else, especially that, because I'm always conscious of, if I judge, it has something to do with something that's triggering me. So as soon as that judgment comes up, like we were talking about a couple weeks ago, I just step right on back, like, because all of a sudden I'm like, oh wait, I feel a little icky, and I'm having a little bit of judgment thoughts. And then the thought is, so why am I judging? Like, what is the trigger? Like, what's there? So it makes it easier, instead of allowing the stuff to be piled up. It's like, you know, cleaning the house, right? If you only clean the house once every 6 months, it's going to be a massive, huge event right?
Right.
Versus if you're picking up every day, you know, every couple days, it's a much more minor thing, you know, to keep things going versus like, oh my God. And then what happens is it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it gets overwhelming, and then you feel like you can't tackle it, and then you'd rather just burn down the house.
Right. Right. And sometimes the universe helps you with that.
That's true. Those are the catastrophic events that we
Exactly.
really would choose, you know, prefer typically not to have.
Right.
And sometimes they happen anyway. Sometimes they happen anyway. And the thing is, if they happen anyway, I'm always like 3,000 more times aware. And I don't look at things as catastrophic. I just look at them as big and huge and like, oh my God, where did that come from? Right. But then I just step back, and that's a huge ding, 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 ding. Watch this very carefully, because there's a big purpose for it, right? Because that means that it was put in there to help me shift directions, to help me get someplace that that I'm creating, but I'm sort of not picking up on the little tweaks. So obviously I just needed to be shifted. And if yeah. And that's what a lot of people are getting right now, right? So it's that, yeah, this is good enough, right? Or I can't do this because of money, you know, because I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to support myself. I mean, this is the typical thing, right?
Yep.
And it's really interesting to me of like when we take that equation out altogether, like because money has become our biggest excuse.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. I mean, why we don't do something, why we don't pursue our bliss, why we don't, you know, really get out in the spotlight, why we don't really, you know, like why we can't do something, and it's a victimhood thing, right? Mm-hmm. But when we stop putting any power to money and just saying, the universe supplies me with everything when I need it, and you commit to listening to that guidance, and you commit to being in that proactive place of already being whole, right?
Right.
And it's like, well, it's just going to be there. However it looks is not my concern. It's just going to be there. And sometimes it's because, you know, sometimes it's because the universe is also saying, really though, to do this where you'll be really, really happy, it would really be best to give this up. But the ego is going, no, 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 I like this.
Right.
It makes me feel good about myself. Right? The $3 million house, the $80,000 car, you know,
Right.
The whatever, and we're like, oh yeah, but this is how I am. This is my lifestyle, and I can't give up my lifestyle. And it's like, why? Maybe the lifestyle doesn't serve you. You know?
Yeah.
Because many of, and it's really funny, like the whole discussion about, it's not the discussion, the sayings about, I can't even think of what they are, but they have to do with like, you know, that rich people are just as miserable as poor people, but in different ways, right?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. It's just a different kind of prison.
Just different lessons, right?
Right.
And I'm just like, well, because I've worked with everybody. I've worked with people like across the spectrum, people who don't know where the next meal is coming from, and people who have so much money, they just don't even know what to do with it.
Right.
And they feel guilty, by the way, for having that much money. And I'm like, no. You should be doing workshops on abundance.
Exactly.
Don't feel guilty about it. Be happy that, you know, that was not one of your lessons, or that you completed that, you know, whatever, that abundance is just that easy for you, which is great.
Right.
But what happens, and it's sort of like the thing with people who win the lottery. So all their money problems are, you know, solved, so to speak, right?
Right.
There's such a huge percentage of people who then within a year, 2 years, 5 years are back in the same exact place they were.
Right.
Because they've blown all the money.
Worse.
Yeah, it's not worse. want all the money or and so it's interesting about using money as an excuse, because when we just stop and just say, okay, well, the universe, the multiverse supplies, supports, and all my job is to do is to be my bliss and to really just say, okay, if this is where my heart is taking me, this is where I'm going to go, and trusting and allowing it to just come together. Wow, how much more sleep we get at night when we can do that.
Right, right.
And, and in general, I've gotten there because I've had it been proved to me over and over and over again. And it's like, well, it comes together, doesn't it? It comes together, doesn't it? It comes together when you let go and you trust. But part of that has to do with the only place to get to that trust is from getting to that place of, really, it is true abundance, right? When you get to that place of I am the infinite divine and it's all there for me.
Right.
Right. And like what we're talking about in that proactive place of I commit to staying in this place of consciousness and bliss and whatever, and everything else is taken care of. Right. So why don't we just stay motivated to stay in that place, and the key is to get to that place, not to just enough, not to just so I can pay my bills, just so I can do this, but to a place of, this is what truly serves me, right? And I see that happening that's what I was saying, is that I see that happening with a lot of people who have a certain life that they've become really comfortable with. Even if it's uncomfortable, it's what they know. So they say, okay, well, I'm going to do this, but I'm just going to dabble in this, even though this is what really makes me happy. But this pays the bills, this has paid the bills, and this is, how it has to be for now because of my kids, because of my spouse, because of my blank, right? Because that's enough to the ego, because the ego says you're only worthy to do that much for yourself. And everything has to be for everybody else, right? Or you have to value yourself based on what everybody else thinks of you. So therefore you have to give to everybody else, on their expectations. I mean, there's so many layers to this. We could just keep on getting bigger and bigger and bigger, right? So
right.
That place of I have versus I want.
Right. I mean, it's almost, the way I see it is, if you can get to a place of where you honestly believe, and if you look at it as something in very 3D terms, it's like every time you spend money out of your account, it just comes right back in.
Yes.
No matter what. No matter if it's, $10,000 or $2. It's always replaced, versus no, it has to be $10,000 before I can feel comfortable.
Exactly. Or 50 or 100 or whatever.
Right, whatever that number might be. Yep. So it's just the knowing that it will always flow back in.
Yep. Yep. I've changed what I've done for myself. What I did for myself when I was changing all those kind of habits was, instead, that saying easy come, easy go.
Right.
I changed that a long time ago to say easy go, easy come, right? Which changes the energy of that just like completely, because you're like, easy go, easy come, it'll come back to me. Like it's just, it'll just come back. It's no big deal. It'll be there, it'll go, it'll be there again, it'll go again. But that's part of the flow, right, of interconnectedness.
Yeah, right.
So,
and that brings in that piece that so many struggle with, including myself, is the trust.
Yes. And to get to the trust is to be committed to getting to that place of that, realization of wholeness, right? Instead of being propelled by lack.
Right.
So then maybe that's where we are today. That's the point.
Right.
Another week where we're like, what are we going to talk about? I don't know.
I know. Yep.
So, yeah, and that feels really good. To commit to, and it's funny. I see that, right? And I see that with people who come to me that I work with, that I know, students and clients and friends and whatever. And they'll do the same thing where they'll get to a certain point, or you'll go to 50 doctor's appointments, go to 50 different doctors to fix the symptoms of this, but never look at the energetic part of what's underneath it.
Right.
Because, that's just too hard. I'd rather just take a pill. I'd rather somebody else tell me or take care of it for me, right? But they're really not. They're actually perpetuating it for you because they're allowing you to not look at it.
Well, I mean, something that comes to mind when you say that is the imagine the financial catastrophe if they cured cancer.
Right.
It's so much ingrained in us, the treatment of it, that it would be such a disaster if it were cured.
Well, not even cancer. What about all need for pharmaceuticals?
Right.
What if we found, provided the key, which really this is what this is.
Right, exactly.
To releasing the need to have that magic pill. Because the magic pill is you.
Right. I can't tell you how many people are shocked that I'm on no prescription medications.
Me too. Yeah.
Well, because, what do you mean? What about what about cholesterol? What about this? What about this? It's like, I don't need it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was funny. Me too. And so the funny thing for me is, and it's so funny if you look around, think of all the excuses we've given ourselves, right? Not only that, but we've given value to certain I don't want to say excuses, certain disempowerments. How's that one?
Yeah. No, yeah, you're right.
How much power we've given to certain disempowerments, right? Right? Like, oh, well, it's just what happens when you get old.
Right. Or yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so, there are people I know, there's a woman I know who's going on 79 years old who I went to Sedona with, and I love her dearly, and she acts like she's 35. And she sit and talk to me for hours about her ails and ailments and stuff. No, she doesn't. If there's something that's, prohibitive to her in that moment, she might bring it up, but it's not like this whole litany of stuff about pills and this and that. And she's not on a lot of pills. I mean, I think she's on a couple of them, but the minor stuff that she was working through. And when, by the way, they happened, she called me up and said, I'm having a hard time finding the core of why this is manifesting in my physical body. And if I'm going to go get this surgically removed or changed, I want to make sure I get to that energetic part so that I don't have a repeat. That's key. That's what I tell people all the time. Not to just remove the symptom, but to make sure you get that stuff underneath it. And so she's done work like this for decades. So she just automatically, again, is in that habit of, okay, if I'm going to concede to go to the doctor and have this taken care of, then I want to make sure that I take care of the part that's causing it to manifest.
Right. Yeah, that's getting to the core of things versus just, well, okay, what am I taking for the symptoms of this?
Right.
Right.
And people say the same thing. And it's so funny. It's like, oh, well, wait for this and wait until you're this age. It's always wait until you're this age. And I'm just like, well, guess what? I'm going to be 50 in a couple months. So what?
Right.
Remember.
Right.
I'm a black belt in Kung Fu. I'm actively practicing that. I'm like, but like, it's so funny because last week I was talking about, my husband had asked me, like, what do you want to do for your 50th? And I texted you about this, right? And I was like, and I was like, I don't know. And it's our 25th anniversary next year and all that kind of stuff too. And first we're going to combine it. And I'm like, no, I want to do something for me. And what would be fun and different? And actually the friend that I'm talking about that's going on 79 for her 50th, she told me she got her pilot's license. And I was thinking about that and I was like, I would love to get my pilot's license because I love to fly, right? And what better way of training ourselves to fly, as we remember more so that at some point you don't need the plane. That would be fabulous.
Right.
But just a reminder to align all thought, word, and deed, to align it with, with the energy of it. And I was like, oh, well, maybe that's it. So I was, well, and I was talking about this to my daughter, and her boyfriend was there, and it was really funny. And so she's 22, and so was he. And it was really funny because I was talking about, I was telling Dad about the pilot license thing, and he was like, well, if you go get it, I'm gonna have to go get it because I'm just
Right,
gonna
right.
do it without me. And I was like,
Well, then you can share the plane.
right. Yeah, I knew that was coming though. And I was like, well, I'm turning 50 first, so you can just wait.
Right, right.
But anyway, so we were talking about that. I was talking about that with my daughter, and her boyfriend stops and turns around. He was walking out of the room and he was listening to the conversation. He stops and he turns around and he goes, so wait a minute. He said, you have black belts in 2 different martial arts. He's like, you got your scuba license, like what, not even 10 years ago. I was like, yeah. He goes, now you want to go for your pilot's license? And I said, yeah. And he goes, so what government agency are you working for? Or is it MI6? Like, come on, tell me. I was like, and I said, yeah, well, it's a great cover. It's a great cover for me, to do these retreats
That's
and
right.
stuff. Yeah, and Brianna goes, yeah, because, she just went to Peru on a retreat, and you know what happens in the Amazon. I said, that's right.
People disappear.
But so the thing is, it wouldn't even occur to me to be like, oh, like so many people get so depressed and so like, oh, this is terrible, and I'm turning 50, and I'm like, yay, like let it be a celebration, and by the way, I feel like I'm getting better as I age anyway, and
Absolutely.
I'm getting freer, and I'm getting more, confident and more excited about, like, I just want to grab this planet by the balls and just totally like saturate myself in this whole like experience,
Right.
and that's that whole proactive way of, why wait until somebody says you have 3 weeks to live to really enjoy your life,
Exactly.
and this is all the same energy, it's the same stuff.
Right.
Like, it goes back to what you're saying about people are amazed that you're not on any prescriptions, and I'm like, yeah, same thing. And when I say things about my kids, and like my oldest being graduated from college and the youngest being a junior in college, they always look at me, they're like, what? Like, if they don't know me really well, they're like, you're not old enough to have kids that age. I'm like, yeah, I am. I said, and
Right.
not only that, but I wasn't even like young to have kids. I was in my late 20s when I did. And they're like, oh my God. And I'm like, yeah, because I don't sit here and I don't talk about, oh, I'm just aging, oh, these old bones, oh, like how many things we talk about in lack, right?
Right. Right.
And that we have created is another whole level of it, an identity in that lack, right? And then even why, and then we get into, talk about comfort. Why leave that comfort zone? Because everybody else is like, oh, it's a human condition, and to have that experience is still a human condition. So if I don't have that experience, I can't be part of the human condition, and I'm going to be left out, right? Then you go back to lack.
Leave me out of that one.
Yeah, me too. I'm like, you know what? I'm pretty happy being left out of that,
Yep.
And it's not that I resist any issues in the physical. It's just that it's just not in my reality. And if something comes up, I just deal with it. I shift it energetically, I take care of it, and I move on.
Right.
That's the rehabilitation. That's really important for us, and it is really deeply embedded because we're so used to, a doctor saying, oh, well, you are getting to be, oh, you're getting to be that age, you're coming into menopause, and, you're going to need to slow down. And it's like, BS, I need to slow down. Like, for what reason? Actually, I'm just starting to speed up, man.
I know.
So it's a supporting ourselves in that infinite space versus, like, it's almost like we have these things that we've created here to ensure that if we get to a certain place in, say, wisdom or remembrance, that we now put another like wall in front of us to say, okay, but you're going to have this as your challenge now. You have to, this is how you're going to have to limit yourself. This is your lack.
Right.
Maybe you have to lack because you're getting older.
Right.
Right. And I mean, that's just one of many, many walls that we create. So what if we just live without the walls and just say the walls are just, well, that's the recognition that the walls are just an illusion.
Right.
and that we can create them or dissolve them. We can take the boulder out of the river whenever we want to.
Or the walls are really just like mist. You can walk through them.
Yeah.
They're not solid.
Right. Or you can see, right, like we've been talking about a lot of that transcendence, right? Being able to
Right.
see them for what they are and what
Right.
purpose they serve in the bigger picture of lessons and our creation collectively,
Right.
but yet not need to be victim to them or need to be a part of that creation. You can, well, be, that's the being in it, but not of it, right? Being in it,
Right.
but not of it.
Right.
Playing the game, but not, but knowing you're playing the game.
Right. Yeah.
And then, by the way, there's no rules. You can change it however you want, and you can just choose to see the whole thing and float on through and know that you're already there. Right? And a lot of people say, "Well, that's no fun."
Right. Right. Well, and that gets into addicted to the drama and addicted to the dysfunction and yeah.
Yeah. So that's our shift. That's our shift for today. Hold on a second. All right. So we know where we're going with this. We're gonna do all that.
Yeah, all of that.
Being in that place, remembering how to exist in that place of complete, well, really, it's that place of completion and wholeness. And what was what we used, the term we used before?
Um,
Well, we know. We don't need the words.
yeah.
All that. And committing ourselves, like what we did on the Share Friday night was, committing ourselves to change, allowing change and embracing it. But it's not even just committing ourselves to that, but committing ourselves to realization, right? Our whole realization.
Right.
Of power, of divine power, of consciousness, of completion and wholeness. And if we commit ourselves to that,
And living from that place of bliss.
yeah. And we commit ourselves to that, then there's nothing to do. And it's letting go of everything that's preventing us from being there. It makes it so much easier, right?
Right.
All right, so all that. Let's go.
could have just stayed there all day.
Me too.
I just got lost.
I did too, and I was like, OMG, this feels so incredible.
Yeah. I mean,
Oh, and there was so much that I saw that I don't, in the beginning, I don't remember it because just as I was coming back, I was like, now what did I see? I only remember the end. And like a good part of it was just watching all this stuff just shift, and it just came into this alignment of perfection, which was just
right. The focus just totally changed.
mm-hmm.
And the focus of everything. Really, really nice.
In such a different way too. Yeah, at the end, this is what struck me to remember, because this was really cool. At the end, I saw us individually and collectively have these like the chakras, how we have represented as the chakras, right? And I started seeing this energy come up, and each chakra just exploded and dissipated, and it went all the way up. And then all of a sudden I saw this spiral come up, and that was like the divine blueprint just sort of all flowed back in. And I was like, oh my God, that feels so incredible. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, yes.
Yeah, it's like such a redefining.
Yeah.
Which, that fits perfect with the chakras releasing to allow that blueprint to come back through.
It was almost like they just became non-existent. It was like because it was almost like those were holding certain things in place, and it's like, nope, no more need anymore. And I was like,
right.
Dang, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Oh.
Started out as we didn't know what we were talking about. Got into some pretty nice level topic there.
Tremendous.
All right, everybody. I think that's enough for today.
Right.
Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Ascended World. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg, Avignone.
We'll see you next time.